Yes, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, a pretty underrated game. It came out in March 2020 and is a remake of Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue Rescue Team. People in the Pokemon community have been recently praising the game and the series as a whole, so I decided to play it for myself to find out if this game and the games as a whole are truly underrated. Let's get started. This game is a dungeon crawler where you go through different floors of a dungeon full of useful items or enemy Pokemon. They will become a wider variety of Pokemon the further you go in. In a dungeon, you can switch between all of your 3-person party, plus there's a hunger bar, which you can restore by eating apples or other items. This is actually done quite nicely because it forces the player to use other Pokemon and choose their moves instead of letting the AI spam the crap out of Razor Leaf like I did with Red Link. You can rescue other Pokemon on your way through these dungeons, whether it's giving them an apple while they're fainted, rescuing them for a mission, or just growing a liking to your team after you beat the shit out of them, which is odd, I guess. Besides that, there isn't really much else to the gameplay of these dungeons. It's just a nice standard dungeon crawler mixed in with some Pokemon, which is done really nicely. I think the difficulty of this game isn't handled the best. It feels all over the place. You're either entering a nice smooth run through of a dungeon or a hellish nightmare. Especially the last two dungeons, being Magma Cavern and Sky Tower, which are just on a whole different level compared to everything else. But hey, at least it's the end of the game, I guess. I really don't know how to feel about the difficulty curve. I mean, I somehow wiped in the Great Canyon, but I didn't wipe ever again until Rayquaza. But hey, at least there's the Illusory Grotto, which I think is a really nice player-friendly addition. I mean, the game has to feel bad after the player wiped in this relatively easy game, so they gave them access to a dungeon full of healing items to make up for the fact the player lost all their money and items. I think it's a nice little recovery, and honestly, it was the reason I kept playing, because the game knew I was struggling and decided to help me, which is a neat plus after I wiped in the Great Canyon. I think the game just felt bad for me on my second Rayquaza fight, because I was so close to killing it first try, but I just ran out of items to spam because on my second fight, I used like 2 Revive All orbs and 2 Reviver Seeds, and then he died. Speaking of these boss fights, they're poorly executed, to be honest. As in strategy, it's literally just spam healing items until the boss dies. There's no strategy or anything. It's just hope and pray and spam items well. But overall, I am not a fan of how this game handles its difficulty curve, but I will give it props for making the challenging ending and helping the player when the game gets too hard. The game also has some nice visuals and has a style that it sticks to, and it does it really well. It looks really good, especially outside the dungeons like Mount Freeze, Frosty Forest, and Sky Tower, to name a few. It really does well with these blue dungeons. As for the game's plot, it's a freaking masterpiece. I won't even go into detail because I most likely will just make a separate full video on the plot alone. That's how deep and great the story is. It's crazy that a silly Pokemon dungeon crawler is such an excellent story. While it has its unanswered questions and questionable moments, that doesn't take away from the story at all. The story is just too good for a game like this, and I love it so much. The one very small downfall of this plot is the characters themselves, who remain the same the entire way through and don't really develop all that much. But I think the story itself is just so awesome, and there's a really good reason why I'm not giving my usual plot summary that takes up like half the video length of this series. Usually here I'd say what changed compared to the rest of the franchise, but I can't really say that because, well, this is the only Mystery Dungeon game I've played, as mentioned in the intro, so yeah. From what I hear, this is a pretty faithful remake, and they don't really change too much from the original besides the UI and stylistic visual changes. Hey BDSP, here's how to make a good faithful remake, damn it. Anyways, that's about it. Time for my final thoughts. Overall, I thought this game was extremely solid, besides some slight flaws with the repetitive gameplay and questionable difficulty curve. I know this is a quicker vid of the series, but that's usually because I give a plot summary, and I just explained why I didn't do that. Expect a full video on that sometime in the future. But yeah, this game's just a really goofy, fun Pokemon dungeon crawler that has an ungodly good story for some reason. So is this game massively underrated and amazing as everyone makes it out to be? Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Because yet again, I can't decide between an 8 or a 9. Thanks for watching. Peace.